Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest and greatest episode of Failing Up. I'm your host, Claire, and today I'm sitting with Siam Hussein, who is a founder and angel investor. And throughout this podcast, we talk about his journey from becoming a student who lost his scholarship to working in gyro trucks to now potentially writing a future book. Hi, Siam. How are you?
Hello. Good. How's it going?
Good. I'm super excited to have you here. You have such an interesting life story from what I've heard so far. So jumping right into it, I want to start from the beginning. Born in Bangladesh, moved to Saudi Arabia. Tell me about what that was like.
So when I was 1 month old, my family moved. And I didn't have any option. It was interesting because, looking back, what I see is that I never got an identity of home because I grew up in so many different cultures. I feel like the whole world has been my home forever. I battled a lot when I was young that, okay, like, what do I call home? What is my culture? But now I got used to that. Like, okay, the whole world is my home. I'll have to think of it that way. So, yeah.
And what would you say your culture is mostly now? Like, which one do you align most with?
Tough question. I have my own value system. I created my own constitution.
Constitution?
I consider myself as a single person country.
Oh, okay.
I have my own value system, own constitution. I mean, people are allowed to enter that, but I don't think I have any specific. I took goods and pieces from every culture and religion. Whatever aligned with me, I took it. Whatever didn't, I didn't. So yeah, I don't think I assigned to any specifically that way.
Okay, so give me some of the key rules or amendments in your constitution. I don't know.
Going to the loaded questions. All right, so I'll tell you a little bit about like what I believe in right now. And it's just easy to picture myself in that way. So do you know of like this concept in physics called emergence?
No, I don't.
So emergence is when you have a lot of like a component has some properties, and when they're at scale, they have like different types of properties. So let's say we have this water. Water molecules, when they're small, they have some properties. But when they're in a glass, they have a little bit more properties. When you are scaling it up for a lake or an ocean, you have different properties. It doesn't even look like a water molecule anymore. So this is called emergence.
Okay.
You can see it in cities. Let's say like you're a human, but you go to a new city like New York. It has a vibe. When you go to Bay Area, it has a vibe. The vibe comes for emergence. So what I believe in, like as a belief system, didn't imagine that we'll go to this right now, but let's go. Is that our whole bodies are built with like small biological, like cells. And each of these cells are almost functional in itself. Like it's like cute little humans, like all these cells. So they have like mitochondria, the energy center, which is producing energy. It's like a own little entity, and it has neighbors, and it's like a whole thing. And when all these cells come, we become us, which is like an emergent property. And similarly, I believe that the whole universe is basically made out of small cells. Like you are a cell, I'm a cell, and we are living in this bigger emergence body, which we are a little bit disconnected with sometimes, and we don't realize that. So coming to my value system, because the values come from belief, and this is what I believe in. And the reason I have to be, let's say, kind towards you or loving towards you or anyone in the cell is because you are part of the same body. So that's Constitution's rule number 1, be kind. But it came from a source of like, what other options do I have? Like, can I not be kind to you? Because if I'm not, I'm hurting the whole body. So it's not possible for me.
So
yeah,
if you not being kind to anyone is like a bacteria basically entering the body and the white blood cells have to fight together kind of thing.
Yeah, you can say that. Like, there are some cells in the body, going through that analogy. is that I might not be the right fit. Like even within the same body, you have kidney cells, you have liver cells. Not all of them are combining all the time because then it will be bad. We have our positions in the cells. I'll hang out with my type of cell kind of people, but I still have to understand the function of every cell in the body. And I have to be kind even from distance sometimes, not necessarily closely. But yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah, that's a very interesting constitution. Have you published it anywhere or?
No, it's it takes a lot of time to marinate, and each rule of the constitution has to fight for like going on to the priority. So this is my number one. And then, yeah, we can talk more. I mean,
okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think something else I want to touch on is that you moved to Texas, right?
Yes.
You were originally on a full ride.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened when you got to Texas. What was it much of a culture shock? Was it everything you expected? What did you think of the U.S. when you first arrived here?
Good question. I did not imagine the US on how. So I had a different vision of US growing up because I watched a lot of like Marvel like Spider-Man was my favorite superhero. And I watched a lot of movies of Manhattan, New York. Like I thought that this is US. And this is where everything is so dreamy when you go there, like the land of opportunity and all this. But when I came to Houston, which is a very big city and very spread out, I was like, this does not look like US at all for me, because Houston, if you have ever been, it's basically like a copy-paste city, I call it. Like you create a template of a neighborhood, Walmart, this shop, they're like this fixed shops, and then you copy this and paste it, and that's basically the city. Every few miles, you just see this copy-paste. There is nothing organic or interesting for me.
Okay.
So that was the first shock, because I grew up in a very more organic city where when I was traveling, I was like, oh, every neighborhood is fun. I mean, New York is more organic also compared to Houston. So that was my first shock, I would say. Second one is that I grew up always in more like communal societies. I feel like the East is more community oriented than the West.
I agree.
In general. So I feel like the definition of friendship was a kind of like a shock after I moved to the US, is that in Bangladesh or even in Saudi Arabia, like whenever someone says that we are friends, we're gonna like die for you. So you need to pick me up in the airport in the 3 a.m. No worries, man. I got you. But here, then I had a lot of friends because I started going to some events and parties and, but I was like, the definition of they're friends, but it's a little different because everyone is more individualistic here. And I would say almost a little bit more lonely. So that was something I had to like, these are...
The U.S. is, I think, one of the loneliest countries, actually. And there's been so much research done about loneliness in the U.S. especially. I don't know how it compares to other countries, but I know we've seen a huge surge in loneliness.
Yeah, so that was kind of like a shock that, this is very different. Things are more, there are so many shocks.
So you were on a full ride.
Yeah, I
What
got a
happened?
scholarship, like a research assistant scholarship, yeah. So I got the scholarship, like I bombarded probably like 800 professors from Bangladesh sitting and emailing. And then I got few, and this was one of them. So I moved here. I'm the first person from both of my parents' side to move to the US. And I didn't have anyone in my guidance funnel to basically guide me on how to do it. So I had to do everything kind of like myself. The first mover advantage or the first mover mistake, I call it now. So basically, so I came here 3 months later. My professor, so I had a funding which took care of my tuition fees, my living expense and everything. So it was a good scholarship. And then my professor 3 months later said that, hey, I'm going to this university in Brownsville, Texas, which is like very rural, like close to Mexico. Nothing bad, but it's just not a big city. And I was like, okay. And he said that if you have to keep this funding, you have to move with me. You have to change the university. I'm like, okay, like I'm living in Houston. It's a bigger city. And I want to stay here. So he said, okay, if you're here, then I'm taking the funding with me. So sorry. So I lost my funding 3 months in. And I was like, okay, I'm the first person. I couldn't tell my family of this massive failure. And a little bit more into context is that before coming to US, I was working in Bangladesh for like 6 months. So I started doing my MBA, and then I was working in an airlines company for like 6 months before I got all this news. So when I came to US, I had to leave a lot of things in the back. Like my MBA was doing good. I was doing this airlines job, and then I was also teaching on the side. So I was doing pretty well.
You were well established there.
Well established. Like I'm happy. Like I was doing well within my friend circle in Bangladesh. But when I left, I had to leave everything, and then I lost the funding. I'm like, why the fuck did I move here? Like it was such a bad blow. And I think the next couple of months was horrible in the way that I didn't know that how will I pay the next semester's tuition fee. And I was like, okay, I don't have money for living expenses, and I cannot tell my parents this thing as well. I'm like, what do I do? So anyways, I spoke with a lot of like friends, and I asked around that what can I do? Like, how do I survive at least for the next 3 months? So I found a job in Dennys. I don't know if you have been to Dennys. This is a diner.
Dennys was a signature staple. Back in the day.
So I didn't even know about Dennys before I started doing jobs. So I'm like, okay, that's why. So I remember that this was in October 2009. I started working in this Dennys, and I didn't have any car. Houston is very massive. You don't have subway or anything. You have to drive. So I didn't have any car, so I had to commute like 2 hours every day one way. I woke up at 6 in the morning, commuted for 2 hours in the bus because you have to change 3 buses to go to that Dennys. And then I went there and like started cleaning. Like I had to wipe pretty much all the windows and stuff. And I've never done this kind of physical thing before. So I was so terrible at... I feel like I got switched within that 2-3 months of Dennys so many times. So first time
they were trying to figure out what you're good at.
They just fired me so many times.
So what time would you leave to go to work and then get off?
6 a.m. I left my home.
Okay.
So I woke up at 5 and like left at 6. And then the work started at 8. And then basically, it was funny, like when I was working in this cashier, I hated when people gave me like cash because I did not know the US coins, and they're so weird. Like some of the coins are bigger in power but smaller in size, like the dime. So, who made these coins? Anyway, so there are like a lot of things I had to learn in that process. But so this was just for survival, for paying the rent. But I cannot really pay the tuition fees with working in Dennys. And I had to, in the meantime, still do my master's because I have to keep my CGPA. Otherwise, my visa status, everything goes away.
Yeah.
So I was working in Dennys, doing my master's, like keeping my CGPA. And then also, I had to figure out how do I fund my next semester. So I started knocking pretty much every professor there is in every department. So electrical engineering. I was doing electrical engineering back then. So electrical, civil, mechanical, all the professors, I basically literally knocked everyone's doors, and then everyone said that, no, sorry, like we do not have fund for next semester. But there's this one guy, he said that, okay, we might, I cannot promise you, but you can work with me voluntarily. So I started working with him voluntarily also on the side. So that's what...
Everything's on the side.
I was doing all these 3 things at the same time.
Because you were technically not allowed to be working, correct?
I was technically, now I'm saying it, now I'm a US citizen, so it's fine. but technically it's like I was doing it under the hood, like in cash, because as an F1 student, you cannot technically do that. But a lot of students do it for survival sometimes. And US is interesting that they have still not figured out this whole thing. But anyway, this is a long, different story. So 2029, so I was doing all this. I would say that my daily routine was that I was waking up in the morning, doing all these things, coming from Dennys to the school, did my classes in the evening, coming home and eat maybe like once a day, like properly, and then go to the bathtub, fill up the bathtub, and just lie down and basically cry, because it was like I was so like suddenly overwhelming.
So stressful.
And that was pretty much my daily routine.
And how long did that continue for?
I would say like 2 months, 2.5 months. And every day I was questioning that, why am I doing it? So I'll tell you like maybe a more specific story. So in Dennys, on Fridays, there are these like more kids come. I think there was like some kids family day or something. And like the kids, they sit on these booster seats. Like
yeah.
So I was washing all these booster seats on the backyard of the Dennys one day. And I was thinking like 6 months ago, I had an MBA. I was doing an MBA in one of the best schools in Bangladesh. I was doing this job. I had everything well. And now I'm washing booster seats. And I don't know what will happen like literally next month. This was December, I think early December. And I have to figure something out by January. And everyone goes out from Christmas and everything. I'm like, how did I end? Like, what did I do? What was the mistake I have done that I have made this decision? And literally, this was, I think, December 22nd. So 23rd, I was in the lab. And this professor suddenly said that, hey, like, Siam, I just wanted to come and tell you that we are wrapping up for Christmas. Thank you for volunteering with me for the last 1.5 months. So we are wrapping up. But before I leave, I wanted to say that I'm going to fund you in the next semester. So all of the things changed within a day almost in my mind, because I was washing the booster seats. And the next day, it was like, and this was a better funding than my previous one. And
that's an insane, like, goes to show your life can change on a dime.
Yeah. So the main interesting thing, what I had a major like realization that Christmas is that, okay, so like, let's say, I mean, you either believe in a God or not, doesn't matter. But let's say there is someone who is all knowing, who knew that on December 23rd, 2009, I will hear this good news, because it was there already. But if that person or whatever, that entity called me when I was suffering and said that, hey, Siam, like, did you know that on December 23rd, you will actually hear massively good news and you don't have to go through this like pain all the days? So I'm like, oh, shoot, like, I never thought that actually every bad thing we go through, there are two ways to look at it. One is that we can continuously keep looking at the bad things. That, oh shit, like my life is miserable. How did I fuck up? Why did I do this? All these things.
Yeah, why me?
But we can also try to look at the positives which are happening at that time, knowing that the good thing will definitely come, like having that belief. So I didn't have that before. So I think the biggest learning from that was that no matter what next dark times come in my life, and I'm sure there are so many remaining, I can always, I build a muscle of forcing myself to look at positive, especially when you're going through a lot of negative, because it is so hard to look at positive, especially when everything falls apart. And I feel like they always happen together. Like you see one bad news and all the shit
it's
blows.
like the 4 horsemen
there we
in
go.
the apocalypse.
Yeah.
I feel like everything, there's a saying, I don't know where it comes from, but it's like everything bad comes in threes. I disagree. I think it comes in a lot more than just that. So I think when we were on the phone earlier, you talked about that being one of the phoenix rising from the ashes moments. I know you've had quite a few of those. So I'd love to hear more about some of the other experiences.
I didn't even know all these terms back then. These are all more like looking back style thinking. So I finished my master's and then I graduated. So that was in electrical engineering. And I realized that I did not like electrical engineering as much, or like it was okay, but I was doing like thin film fabrication. I don't know if you know that. Basically working in Intel kind of thing. So most of the work in Intel or thin film fabrication is that you go to a clean room. Do you know clean rooms?
Mm-mm.
Clean room is like it's 1000th level, particle level clean, where everyone has to wear this like space suits and they have to go and mix like all these alloys to make this IC chips, which are used for your phone or laptop.
Oh, so is that fun? That sounds interesting.
It is fun, but it is very repetitive and boring. Like
okay.
literally you go and like, it's like a lab job. You mix up. It's fun in the beginning, but it's not fun.
So what did you want to do instead?
I wanted to learn a skill which gave me more freedom in terms of like, okay, I can do a job, but it gives me more freedom that I can take this skill and still reuse it somewhere else. And I saw that, okay, like software is probably better for me because software, I can do a job for a few years, but still I'll have that muscle built and I can use this muscle in anything for myself in future. So I knew that I wanted to go to the software industry in general. And that was back in 2010-11. So it wasn't as hyped as it is right now. It was hyped, but not as much. So I moved to New York because there was this friend of friend who said that, hey, like if you come here, there are a lot of software jobs, and I actually have a job. And I took my very old $3,000 Nissan Altima, which was like supremely old. It basically broke down while I was driving in Tennessee. But I came to New York with this hope with this guy. And then I said that, hey, I'm here. I left everything in Houston. I'm here in New York. He said, oh, shoot, we don't have that job anymore. So I mean, happens. Like, do not put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like the New York time in 2011 was probably another like very hard time for me. So because I had like this $3,000 Nissan Altima and I had $2,000 or something around that saved in cash in New York, which is nothing, obviously, which I had to use for living. So I lived in a like shared house with like basically paid for like a bunk bed situation, $300 per month in New York, in like deep Queens. And I was like, oh shoot, what do I do now? So I had to start work. I mean, I was looking for some odd job just so that I can pay the rent. Obviously, I'm very good in finding odd jobs by that point. So I started working in this like food truck, like this gyro stands. I'm sure this is in New York.
They have some of the best gyros out there.
Yeah, maybe one of them was made by me. So the halal gyro stand. So like I started first working on basically taking the meat from the freezer and to the gyro, like loading the gyros. Okay. That's one, like, I don't know if you know that whole background industry, what is happening here, but I know it now.
I know it's a craft. I do know it's a craft.
Yeah, it is a very shitty in terms of people behavior industry. Like people are really ruthless there, but yes, it is, I'm sure.
In the industry or your customers?
No, not customers. Like in the industry, like people are very rude because like it's very tough, like in general. In general, restaurant, I have so much respect for restaurant workers and stuff. Like it is a tough job.
Yeah, they're hustlers.
Very much hustler, not like a software industry where each person talks to each other like respectfully. People are shitty, like all the managers. Oh my God, there are so many horror stories with bad managers there.
What did you learn from working in the restaurant, food truck, gyro industry? What were some of the hard lessons that you learned?
I think it's hard for a lot of people to, like many of us, like many smart people get stuck sometimes. And we don't know any other way because we are more like in a survival mode, because these industries are like, these kind of works are very like demanding physically. And after you have spent the whole day with this physically demanding job, you don't have energy to do anything else. It doesn't matter if you're smart or not. If you're stuck in that loop once,
you're working a physically demanding
job. It's difficult for you to find time or energy left to do anything else. Although you know that it's not a good job, it doesn't matter. It's very difficult to get out. And I think most of the people who are there now currently, I think they're struggling. And I mean, all I want to do now is that be a little bit kind to them, because there are some days where, especially like tipping, I will say, like there was one lady who basically in this job time it was 6 months, so there are a lot of like struggling stories, but there was this lady who I was close. So this was after the gyro. I started doing a restaurant job in a Indian restaurant thing, and before closing, so I was closing this door one day, like it was like late. I think like I was shutting down the restaurant because I was in charge. It was like 11 p.m. or something. But there's this lady came and was like, hey, like, can I have some food? I'm like, okay, sure. And then she has been the nicest. Like, she gave me $100 tip on like, I don't know, $60 food. But we chatted for some time. And she was like, hey, I'm your mom here. If you need any help in New York. I'm like, oh my God, this is like,
so nice.
There's some angels who come in your life suddenly, randomly.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like this, from her perspective, maybe she's very well off and she liked chatting with me for an hour or something. But for me, it was like a glimpse of hope in like months. It's like, for me, it's like a person who is in desert who got water after such a long time. So I know that how hard it can be. So now I try to like surprise people a little bit in the restaurant if I can. But yeah, so that's like, yeah, I don't know if it is a lesson, but it's something I feel like I should do more. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people need to be a lot kinder to people in the restaurant industry. You don't know what it's like until you work in it. I used to be a sous chef, and just dealing with bad people or bad management was always very challenging. And by the end of the day, you're just so exhausted that you're just like, all right, I have no energy for anything else. But it's a very, like, physical exertion is another breed of work, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think people are not very well trained in terms of management. Like they have not gone through a EQ training, interpersonal. They're just like the only way they know how to work is through coercion and pressure and control. And when you are under that, and there's so many toxicity I've seen, like, I mean, we can go long on this. I'm sure people know the struggles.
And you're saying does that apply only to, you're saying, physical jobs, like jobs that require physical exertion? Or are you saying like blue collar jobs? Or because doesn't toxicity apply across all industries? I mean, in the world of finance, there's so many horror stories of, bankers getting worked to death, for example.
That's a very good question. Yeah, I think there is toxicity in everywhere, more or less, but I think the form is different in the blue collar. It's more on the face. And the more you go into the like fancier, more whiter jobs, it becomes more subtle or more strategic or more like not on the face as much, I would say.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I actually think I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So jumping into what happened after, you started your own company, right?
Yeah.
After you left the food truck. How did that happen?
No. So from the food truck.
Oh, I'm skipping steps here.
All good. So after the food truck, I basically self-taught myself on how to make iPhone apps. So the same hype we're going through right now in AI, that was a iPhone, like mobile phone.
What
hype.
year was this?
This was in 2011.
Okay, 2011.
So 2011, like iPhone came out 2 or 3 years ago. Just new. Everyone is trying to make something in the App Store. So there's this guy called Ray Winderlich, which is a legend in iOS. So I learned that. I watched his YouTube videos and landed a job at the end of 2011 in what's the name? In LA. in an insurance company called Farmers Insurance. So that was my first job. Anyway, so long story short, on the career side is that I worked in the tech industry, started as a junior iOS developer, like iPhone app developer, to a senior architect, like an assistant vice president of mobile and web app division of a financial investment company based in Baltimore. It's called T. Rowe Price. And then I was thinking that, and I got my green card through my company also.
Right.
And I think while I was doing that job, I was thinking that I wasn't very fulfilled. Like, it was giving me money, but I was like, I want to do something which is more meaningful for me instead of just making rich people more rich, or, I wanted to do something more impactful. So I left that, and then I started my first company.
And what was the first company?
So that was about helping Bangladeshi students choose universities in US, like a mobile app to connect students with universities based on like personalized recommendation.
And was that the one where you said you had a fallout with the co-founder?
No, that was my second.
The next startup.
Yeah, so I have like many.
So what happened to that startup?
The first one?
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I would say that we registered it as a company, but I would say like it did not generate revenue or no traction. So basically, I and a couple of my friends, we built a mobile app which was using machine learning. I mean, now it's super popular, but back then it was a little less popular. It was in 2018, where we built a recommendation engine based on all the universities in US to give like personalized recommendations to every student. Like you put your profile and your, I don't know, CGPA, your GRE score, everything, and we'll tell you that these universities are more fit for you. So we built this whole algorithm, blah, blah, for like, I mean, I'm a technical guy. So everything I thought was from first on the technical perspective. So we built this whole thing for 6 months, 6 to 8, I forgot, 6 months or 8 months, starting to end. And then we launched it. And then we saw that there were some signups, but there were no real traction. So by the end of almost 1 year, I realized that the biggest mistake a startup founder can do is that building the product first and then trying to sell it or market it. Now I feel like it is a known wisdom, although I feel like still a lot of technology people make this mistake. On like first understand the user's pain point, try to build something unscalable and if possible even no tech first. See that if it is repeating and then build the tech layer. But I didn't know that. So that was the first learning, that don't build the product first. First build a very like super MVP and roll it out first. So yeah.
And talk to your customers.
Talk to your customers and yeah. So that was the first company.
So you ended up winding that down.
I was like, yeah, let's wind it down.
And what about the next startup?
So the next one was, I would say, came kind of more organically. So while I was doing that, my master's, I started a Facebook group where we helped Bangladeshi students to go to study abroad for like free. We discussed like a crowdsourced Q&A group. Right now, that group has more than 220,000 members. It's one of the largest groups, if not the largest group, combining Bangladeshis who are living abroad in different good schools, FANG companies, all those.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's really cool that you started that.
Thank
Good
you.
for
you. I mean, I didn't even... I cannot still believe that I started it because I'm a very average person.
No.
But yeah, it's really like a lot of people help me, and then
pay it forward.
Yeah. So basically, what I realized that a lot of these students are coming here. They started coming to me and saying that, hey, like you went through a little bit of hardship of landing a job in tech. You taught yourself. You're not from software engineering. How did you do it? So I started kind of like teaching students casually on a YouTube channel as a fun thing that, hey, this is how you land a job in tech. And then slowly it started, I realized that okay, this could actually be a business. So I had 2 more friends. Friends means like one from a college buddy, you can say, like not really a close friend, my college classmate, and one of his friends. They both live in Toronto. And we are all discussing that, hey, I'm already teaching. And we are all discussing like, hey, we can actually start a business out of it. Like, let's start a coding boot camp or something like that for immigrants or like for like this group, like who doesn't have this guidance. It was called Get Me Hired. And yeah, I started it. And I think like the business model was income share agreement. I don't know if you know income share agreement. So after you land a job, you pay a percentage of your salary.
Oh, like a recruitment firm.
Yeah. So we started that. And then within 3 months, we had like 10 students and we started having like probably like $1,000 per month revenue. Like they landed jobs and we started having revenue. And I never had revenue ever because I have never run a company before. The first one didn't have any revenue. The second one started having within.
That was a big step.
I was like, wow, we have $1,000 per month.
Gotta celebrate the little wins.
Exactly. I mean, doing a job is much easier. Like when you are doing a startup, $1,000 a month first time is hard. I was like, oh shoot, like we have cash now. So that was good. Like, okay, that was good. But the thing which started happening there was that so I think like I never co-founded a company before this. So again, everything I'm learning almost like a child on this. Like maybe I should have read some books, honestly, but I started doing everything without knowing, I feel like. So I had to go through a lot of mistakes. So these two other co-founders and I started having conflict in how do we scale the company. So I brought in a lot of my friends. I had this massive Facebook group, which was almost working as a user acquisition funnel for that, because I already had a brand built somewhat.
A pool of 220,000 people to choose from.
Yeah. And then I brought in also a lot of like partners who are like mentors. So they were teaching this, like from FANG companies, they were teaching, I don't know, data structures and algorithm and all this. I think the main issue started happening when my style of building a company is more like, I do not want to make the power centralized on the top. I'm more about building a very strong team where we give more, empower the team more, and have less control on the central command. That's my style. I'm more like a community person. And they wanted to have everything on the co-founding team as a silo in terms of decision making, and almost having a separate chamber. And I didn't like, it's a difference in management style. They didn't discuss everything with the teammates. They were like, no, Siam, we only keep it on the co-founders. We don't discuss these things. I'm like, dude, we have to be transparent. What is happening? They're our friends. They are investing their time. We should be honest. But they're like, no, so there are some issues started happening in terms of difference. And what happened is that, so this was a Delaware C Corp. And one day, so we had 3 board of directors, me and the other 2 friends. One day I got called in a board of directors, like online Zoom meeting. And then this was during COVID, like April 2020, like starting of COVID. I remember that I was called in this call and said that, hey, Siam, you're fired. So I was the CEO of the company. And I didn't even realize that, like, and I still have that PDF. I thought that I'll print that PDF and like as a shining armor. But later I basically got fired from my own company, and I didn't know all these things of shareholders, board of directors. I was just like, okay, let's start a company. I didn't know what is a Delaware C Corp. And then I had to bring a lawyer in. The lawyer said that they cannot technically fire you because you have still majority stake. Like, how many people do you have on your side? And we realized that it's more than 51%. So technically I can completely reshuffle the whole board if I want to. But I didn't know all these things. I didn't know that a shareholder is more powerful than the board.
So did you reshuffle?
We started reshuffling, but to be honest, by that time, the team was already so toxic, I realized or reflected a little bit on myself that it will most likely, I was probably spending 70% of the time on reading Delaware C Corp. How do I politicize with my other co-founders? How do I protect? I realized that this is not worth it. It's like, it's a new company, only 8 months old. So I thought that, hey guys, you guys keep this company. You seem to be very... and then we both started actually bringing our own lawyers in. So I had my lawyer who is basically... We're not even communicating. At some point, 1 month, we're not even communicating.
Oh, you know they were raking in the fees like crazy.
They are bringing their lawyers and I'm bringing my lawyer, and the lawyers are communicating. And we realized that, guys, like, we're only making the lawyers rich. Let's just come to an agreement. It's fine. So I left the company, but I learned a big lesson on like human relationships, that it's better to take things a little slow and like pressure test every relationship in like segments of small things, and then slowly create more depth instead of like, oh, I'm like, even in like, it goes for all relationships, like going to date and like, oh my God, this was such a good date, I'm dying. Like, everything, humans have multiple layers, and the only way you can reveal all these layers is through going through a lot of different types of experiences over a span of time.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being so, I don't know, like shiny in your eyes in the beginning about a relationship, it's better to be a little bit more grounded, at least for me, because I become super shiny in the beginning about humans.
So how do you become more grounded?
Just just coming back to your in relationships. I'm thinking like, this is
Both.
a hard question.
Personally or professionally?
I would say, I mean, I have been doing meditation for the last 7-8 years. This is one way I ground. I do writing, another way I ground. Spending mandatorily a lot of like me time, I would say. So every week I have one day when I don't communicate with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I just reflect on my thoughts. And then I would say, yeah, these are a few ways I ground myself.
Okay, so you suggest, so let's say there's someone who is starting their own company, or someone who is super excited about someone that they just met and went on a date with. The solution is slowing yourself down in any process, you would say, is meditation.
I think meditation is just one way to do it.
Okay.
Basically, understanding your internal thoughts. So most of us do not have the societal training or in general training to understand what are our innate desires in general. Many of us are motivated by someone else or society or money, but mostly externally.
Yeah.
That, oh, I see that, oh, my friend is doing good. Oh, he is doing good, or she is doing good. They got Forbes 30 under 30. They got this, they got that. And I think many of us are motivated through those because that's how we got trained. And we're fundamentally more like a following type, I would say, species. But eventually we end up not being happy because they are maybe not aligned with what we want internally. And in order to understand what we want internally, we have to spend a lot of time with ourselves. Meditation is just one function or one way to spend time with ourselves. It can be anything, but it has to be more solo time.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the nature.
Speaking of solo time,
Yeah.
you brought up something about silent retreats.
Yeah.
What is a silent retreat? And I guess what got you into the silent retreats?
Silent retreat. So this was in 2016. I was working like full time back then. And I am someone who is like, in general, more like type A. So very doer type, building, like, you understand, like if startup founders have to be that way somewhat. curious, always exploring, always chasing the next thing. That was more of my style. It is modified a little bit, but back then I was fully that. And I had my friend who suggested that, hey, see, I'm like, you're so like agitated all the time, like so hyper.
Did you agree that you were
and I was
agitated?
I mean, this is the best way. I mean, I didn't even think that there could be any bad thing in it. But I'm like, yeah, I'm that way. But he said that, hey, you should try this thing called silent retreat. And back then I was very logical, very rational. And I didn't see any other way of looking at the world. I was like, why would I waste 3 days in silence? It seems extremely unproductive. But I was like, okay, I like trying new things. Why don't I give it a shot? So I went to this in middle of West Virginia, which is also very interesting that in West Virginia, this Buddhist monastery kind of thing. And then I did my first silent retreat. So silent retreat is where you are in silence for a certain amount of days, and you just breathe and you eat, and that's it. You don't talk with anyone, you don't communicate, you don't write, you don't read, nothing. Only breathing.
You're sitting with your own thoughts like that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And last year I have done 10 days silent retreats. That was
So that's 10 days of no talking.
Yeah.
You can't write down your thoughts either?
No.
Do you watch TV? What do you do during the 10 days?
When you enter this facility, you have to leave everything. So like you have your clothes, but they check you, and you have to leave your laptop, phone, Apple
no
Watch,
technology?
whatever. No, everything you drop.
So it's literal.
Empty.
It's literal silence. It's emptiness of everything.
Yeah, you're just wearing your clothes. All you do in the 10-day, it was even more intense because I had to wake up at like 6. I mean, we had to wake up at 4:30, but I was sleeping. 6 to whole day, I would say 13 hours of meditation every day. And just sitting and breathing and eating and just moving for the food. And that's it. 10 days. And no human connect. Like, there are people.
Okay.
But you are not supposed to look at them. Like, everyone is looking on the floor and just going into the kitchen, and they're eating like they have everything served for you. So you take everything, but you don't try to make eye contact with anyone.
So 10 days of that. Wait,
yeah.
Okay, my intrusive question that popped up was, how did you wake up if you can't have noise?
They put like a ding.
Gong.
Yeah, gong.
So that's the only noise you hear all day?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's complete silence.
Yeah.
So what did you learn during that time? Like, how did you... I feel like especially if you're someone who's go, go, go all the time, especially because you're a founder, you're probably super, like you said, type A and very intense.
Yeah.
How did that enable you to slow down? How did you slow down? I feel like I wouldn't survive. I don't even survive for like 45 minutes without talking. So
I have done many by this point, but I think I have learned everything in silent retreats. Like, if I suggest anything right now to any human I meet, I feel like let's say you forget me forever, you don't meet me ever, please do a silent retreat.
Why?
Because in the beginning, it does it gives you time to look at internal, because that's where everything is, basically. Everything you are looking for, you will be surprised. So like, it's so funny. In the beginning, it took some time for me to get adjusted to this, but later I actually started enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And it's so fun that you can just sit in silence and not be bored, because every single moment is so beautiful. So I'll tell you what I learned from my first silent retreat. So the first time, I agree with you, like you, I was like, this is a full waste of time. And I fell asleep a couple times while I was sitting, because there was this person who was guiding. The second ones, there was no guide. But like the first one, it was a guided silent retreat.
Okay, so there's still noise. You hear people.
Someone is saying that, hey, listen to your voice, like meditation guide.
Okay.
A human. But I fell asleep the first night. I was like, this is such a waste of time. Why did I come to West Virginia and paid for it? But the second day, there was, so this was like a monastery thing, as I said. And outside of that, there is this like backyard or front yard where there are a lot of this like leaves. And then on the one of the leaves, there was this dewdrop. So I'll tell you, so that in meditation, the fundamental thing is that you have to focus on one thing. Usually we focus on breath because it's easy. But I decided to focus. I was sitting on the end of this like room where there was a window and I could see that like dewdrop. And I decided to focus on that dewdrop. And it hit me the first time while I was sitting is that that was a 1 hour meditation session straight. And this dewdrop started becoming more beautiful over time. I was like, oh, there is sun coming and it's shining. And I didn't get bored looking at one single dewdrop for an hour.
But is that something you had to train your brain to do? And you think it's because the time progressed, your brain just
my brain,
down?
I think, probably slowly switched because I was probably in the fight mode in the beginning because it's so new. But the next day after sleeping and waking up and going through somewhat of meditation by that time, maybe already 12 hours into this state, suddenly it could switch that, oh, like it's not about chasing the next thing, but actually finding more ways to look at the same thing, because you can look at one flower in infinite different ways and spend whole life looking at a flower. And I was like, oh, I don't have to chase. I can sit, and I don't have to travel to Bali. I don't have to travel anywhere. I can have this like existential experience in my backyard for free. So I was like, oh, this is not a hoax. Like there is something here. So I got like, and there are a lot of like interesting, at the end of the first 3-day silent retreat, there's the guide. We broke the silence, and there are around 30 people. All of us shared how we felt. A lot of people were from DC, Philly, like it was in West Virginia, so more from the DMV crowd. And many of them are like politicians, startup founder, like successful people, but they're all maybe going through different phases. But everyone shared on why they came, and we felt all very connected. I was like, why do I have to go to bars or anything anymore? I can just go to silent retreat. And after we speak from the silent retreat, we have the best connection. I felt so connected with everyone. And then this guide, he told me that the issue with the struggle with you, Siam, is that you consider yourself as like a jar, which is filled with mud and water. And your struggle is that you're always shaking it. So just let the jar like settle for a while, and then you'll see the mud and water separate, and then you can see. So, and now I try to go always when I'm like, okay, I have to control this situation. I have to fix this. When I see that happening right now on myself, I just, all right, stop shaking the jar. Then you can see. So I keep doing that. That's one of the learnings. But I would say like, everything is guided through silence for me right now. That's where I find the connection with my core, and that's how I implement everything. I don't look at society as much. So yeah, I'm definitely more, or try to be more internally driven now. That's a big change.
That's insane. That's insane in like the coolest way ever. You definitely intrigued me into looking into silent retreats, because I feel like I'm the same way. I'm always go, go, go. But sometimes I feel like it's important to stop and appreciate what's all around you. And I feel like, especially in New York, known for being one of the most fast-paced cities in the world, it's easy to always be go, go, go. But it's important to slow down.
That would be something so amazing to be able to create in New York, actually. To be
new startup idea.
To be able to help
silent
people to find more internal guidance.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us could use it, me included.
Yeah, me too.
So, okay. What are you doing today? What have you been up to today? What are you working on right now? Your shirt.
Today I'm with you. The shirt is basically my like functional mission, let's say. So as you can, I went through a lot of immigration struggle myself. I met a lot of smart people in the food trucks, who one of them was like a nuclear engineer, another one a physicist who is in Dunkin' Donuts. I know that a lot of smart people who are immigrants, they're stuck in a lot of blue-collar jobs like driving taxis, stuff like that. So one of my more pragmatic mission is to be able to help immigrants in the US either by landing their first high-paying jobs or founding companies, whichever route they want to go. So that's basically my mission, let's say. But currently, or what I'm more excited about next year, because this is the best time of the year where I can get to reflect. December is full reflection month for me. So I do a lot of annual reflection and recalibration and things like that.
And what does that look like? Silence? Or journaling?
A little bit of silence, journaling, but also like brainstorming. So I'm actually hosting one reflection workshop with some of my friends. I have a lot of formats. I have been doing it for a couple of years already. So I want to bring in some of my friends where we go through this workshop and then we do a little bit solo work and then we share. And it will be a publishable article or document, like a public annual reflection. I would love to have you there as well.
Yeah, I'm in. I need to self-reflect. So.
What I want to do next year, what I am putting to the universe as a signal is that I want to publish a book. This will be a book for every immigrant. There are 1 million new immigrants entering the US every year. And they're lost about pretty much a lot of things, like how do I buy housing? What is credit score? How do I get a good credit? Like, all these things are so opaque for a newcomer. I feel like even for US people, it could be helpful. Like, how do I do my taxes?
Yeah, no, the financial education system.
Yeah. So I want to basically write a book which will be for all these immigrants. They will have a blueprint of how America 101. Like, you read this book, it's a guidebook. You have like tips, tactics, and also like work things where you can do some DIY projects, like write things down. A lot of graphics, infographics, which you can print. So yeah, that's my main focus right now. I want to write a book.
That's amazing. And it's going to publish next year?
Yeah, that's the
okay.
goal.
Well, you'll have to come on next year.
Sounds
we
good.
need an update.
Sounds good.
So how can people best get in contact with you to keep up with your journey? I
would say LinkedIn. I'm trying to be active in LinkedIn, more active. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best way.
I feel like, LinkedIn is the easiest. So do you still have your coding, your YouTube videos up on coding?
Yeah, we took some of them private, but not fully anymore. But
you need help coding, everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, your story has been insanely impressive. Like, I think it's really, really inspiring. I mean, from moving to Texas, getting the scholarship taken away, working at Dennys, then working another job that got shut down, then working in the gyro truck. I'm in awe, seriously. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you for taking time for talking with me.
Yeah, I'm excited that the rest of the world gets to hear your story.
Thank you.
We'll have you back on here when you get the new book.
Sounds good. Next year.